I was 16, sitting in bed late one night, scrolling through my Instagram feed. I paused on a photo posted just minutes earlier by my best friend, Brielle. She was lounging beside her backyard pool with her friend Talia. They both looked carefree, laughing at something just outside the frame. I gave it a like, planning to leave a comment, but as I scrolled through the other comments, something strange caught my eye. It was the most recent one, posted less than a minute ago, by a user named jam_02358. The comment read, "You're a very hot little lady." Instantly, my stomach turned. Brielle and I were both 16. The guy's profile picture showed a graying man, maybe in his 40s. His feed was bizarre, mostly blurry photos of empty parks, beer bottles, rusting machinery, and odd statues. His posts had barely any likes. He followed over 100 accounts, but only had 15 followers himself. One of the accounts he followed was Brielle's. I texted her, "Hey, that comment on your post is super gross. You should block that dude." She replied almost instantly, "Brielle, yeah, I know. So creepy. Already blocked him." We both kind of brushed it off after that. I left a goofy comment on her post like I'd originally planned, and we moved on. Or at least, we thought we had. The next day after school, Brielle and I walked home together like we always did. We lived across the street from each other. It was one of those golden autumn afternoons, the kind that felt lazy and safe. But as we neared her block, I noticed a white car creeping slowly behind us. It wasn't just passing by, it was crawling. The windows were tinted, and I couldn't see the driver's face. When we reached her driveway, the car paused for just a second, then abruptly sped off down the street. "What the hell was that?" I asked. Brielle bit her lip. "Come inside with me." I stayed over the rest of the day. Her parents were out for the evening, which wasn't unusual, and I'd crashed there countless times before. We worked on a biology project, ate pizza, laughed way too loud, and forgot about the weirdness from earlier. But around 10 p.m., we heard a soft knock at the front door. We were upstairs in her room, so the sound came faint and delicate. Brielle paused the movie we were watching and got up. She's always been cautious, so instead of opening the door, she peeked through the side window at the front porch. Then I heard her footsteps running up the stairs. She burst into the room, pale and wide-eyed. "There's a man outside," she whispered, shutting the door behind her. "What?" I stood up, confused. "It's probably the pizza guy again, or something." "No," she said. "It's not. He's just standing there." We both crept back downstairs and looked out the window. No one was there. The porch was empty. "I swear," she murmured. "He was right there." Suddenly, the back door rattled. Someone was trying to turn the knob. Slowly, deliberately. Then came the sound of it being pushed in against the lock. We stared at each other in frozen horror before racing back up to her room. Brielle slammed and locked the door behind us. We didn't speak, just sat on our bed, hoping the silence meant whoever was out there had left. Then Brielle gasped, pointing at her window. I turned. There, staring at us through the second-floor window, was a man. He had one eye pressed against the glass. In his hands, he held a camera. The lens reflected a small flash of light, as if he'd just taken a picture. We screamed. We screamed like something inside us snapped, because the only way he could be at that window was if he had climbed onto the patio roof. We didn't wait to see what he'd do next. We bolted into the hallway, down 2 flights of stairs, and into the basement, slamming the door shut behind us. We curled up in the corner, clutching a blanket and praying we wouldn't hear footsteps on the stairs. We stayed down there until nearly 1 a.m. when her parents finally came home. When we told them what happened, they were horrified. Her dad ran outside with a bat, but whoever it was had already vanished. Later that night, as I was lying in bed back at my house, I got a text from Brielle. Brielle, I just checked that guy's Instagram again. The one who commented. She sent a screenshot. It was him. The face at the window, the one with the camera, it matched the profile picture of jam_02358. We reported the account, but the next morning it was gone. Either deleted or renamed. Erased like a shadow at dawn. We both keep our accounts private now. Every time I post a photo, I think about that camera flash. The eye behind the glass. And I wonder, who else might be watching? It started with something small, something stupid, even. It was a regular Thursday afternoon. School was dragging, and we were all just looking forward to the weekend. Our friend group had a Snapchat group chat we called The Core. Me, Eli, Marcus, Drew, and Ty. We'd send each other dumb videos, random updates, memes, nothing serious. That morning, Ty told us he'd lost his phone. Left it somewhere between the gym and the cafeteria. No Find My iPhone. No lock screen password. It's gone, he'd said with a shrug. That sucked, but we moved on. That evening, I stopped at a gas station on the way home. This older guy at the next pump was clearly struggling. He couldn't figure out how to use the credit card reader and kept pulling the nozzle out too early. I found it hilarious. So I did what any teenage idiot would do. I filmed a 6-second video and sent it to the core group. Then I went home. Later, I opened Snapchat to see who'd watched it. All 4 names were there, including Ty's. I frowned. He told us hours ago that his phone was gone. I sent him a quick text asking if he'd found it. Nothing. I messaged the group instead. Marcus replied first, saying he was literally sitting next to Ty at that moment at Drew's house. Nope, Marcus said. Still no phone. Confused, I drove over to Drew's place. When I got there, they were already talking about it. Marcus had checked the snap map, and Ty's phone was still broadcasting its location. That location? An abandoned construction site 10 minutes away. Weird, Eli muttered. Think someone stole it. Only one way to find out, Drew said, grabbing his keys. It was dumb. It was reckless. But we were 5 guys, all taller than 6 feet, and more adrenaline than sense. We piled into Drew's SUV and drove out to the site. A skeletal maze of concrete walls and steel beams, half swallowed by weeds. The place had been shut down after the contractor went bankrupt or something. No power, no security, just rust and silence. We hopped the fence. The snap map still showed Ty's phone at the heart of the site. A 3-story building with exposed brick and shattered windows. We found a gaping hole in one wall and stepped inside. Our footsteps echoed in the cold, empty shell of the place. Trash, broken tools, old blueprints. It smelled like wet dust and something metallic. Ty pulled out his phone and checked again. It's right here, he said. Like, right here? Marcus asked. We all looked around. Empty. We swept the first floor. Nothing. Then the second. Still nothing. But then, just as we stepped into a large open room on the second floor, our phones buzzed. A new snap from Ty's account. It had a caption, "Run," and a photo of us standing in that room. Dude, Eli whispered. We turned to each other in stunned silence. None of US had taken that photo. Then, flash. A blinding white light burst from the adjacent room, followed by the distinct click of a camera shutter. Someone was there. I don't even remember who screamed first. Maybe it was me. But we all bolted, down the stairs, out the hole, leaping the fence like it was on fire. No one spoke until we were back in the car, all of us gasping, looking behind us. Back at Drew's house, we tried to piece it together. Whoever had Ty's phone had been following us, watching us, long enough to set up a perfect shot, time it with our entrance, and even add a caption. We checked Snap Map again. Gone. Ty's location had vanished. An hour later, Ty got a new phone. As soon as he logged in, the old phone disconnected. The trail went cold. We never went back for it. And none of us ever figured out who took the picture or why. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed and the room is dark, I see that flash behind my eyelids. That moment frozen forever in a photo we never took. And I wonder if that photo is still out there, if someone still has it, and if they're waiting to send another. It was one of those nights where everyone seemed to be doing something, except me. My group chat was full of party invites, video clips, and pictures of people having fun. I sat on my bed in sweats, scrolling through my phone when I remembered what my friends had been telling me for weeks. You gotta try Tinder to see what's out there. So I caved. I downloaded the app, picked 4 of my best photos, wrote a dumb one-liner in my bio, and started swiping. It didn't take long to get matches. Most didn't respond, but one did, a girl named Erin. She had long dark hair, intense eyes, and a smirk that made her look like she always knew more than she let on. What really got me was how smooth she was. Everything I said, she had the perfect reply. Even when I said something awkward, she turned it around, made it fun. She wasn't just pretty, she was magnetic. After about 30 minutes of chatting, she sent me her number. I texted her right away. The texts were green. Android. That was a little disappointing, but whatever. We were vibing. That same night, barely an hour into texting, she invited me over. I live about 20 minutes away, she said. Come hang. I'm home alone. It felt fast, but I was bored and curious. The address she sent led to a worn-out condominium complex on the edge of town. Not exactly luxury, but not too sketchy either. I drove out around 9 p.m. The building had dim lighting and that weird hospital-scented hallway smell. There were only 10 or so units. I found Unit 7, the one she told me to come to, and noticed something immediately. The door was slightly ajar. I hesitated. My hand hovered just inches from the wood. I could see the faint blue glow of a television inside. No voices. No footsteps. Just that eerie flicker. I knocked once gently. The door creaked, open a little more. That's when I saw it. Through the widened crack. Someone was standing just behind the door, half hidden in the shadows. I could see one bloodshot eye peeking through the gap, staring directly at me. Waiting, not saying a word, not moving, just watching. And in that split second, I understood. They had been standing there the entire time, waiting for me to cross the threshold. I wasn't walking into a date. I was walking into a trap. I reached out slowly and pushed the door shut, just enough to wedge it closed again. I turned and walked, not ran, back down the hall. Once I got to the exit door, I sprinted to my car. I locked it the second I got inside, heart racing so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. I drove home on pure instinct, barely remembering the turns I made. Back in my room, I sat on the floor, shaking. I opened Tinder and deleted the app. But before I did, I checked her profile one more time. Gone. No Erin. No chat history. No trace. I still don't know who or what was behind that door. But I know one thing for sure. Some people don't want to match with you. They want to find you. It was a regular Monday afternoon when Ty told us he'd lost his phone. We were all sitting at the lunch table like usual. Me, Marcus, Eli, and Gabe, when Ty came over looking annoyed and kind of embarrassed. It's gone, he muttered. I checked everywhere. Gym locker, classroom, even the bathroom. We asked if he'd tried using Find My iPhone, but he just shook his head. Didn't have it on. That was it. We all shrugged. It sucked, but there wasn't much any of us could do. Life moved on. Later that day, I was pumping gas after school when I saw this guy fumbling at the pump across from mine. He looked totally lost, pressing buttons out of order, pulling the nozzle before paying. I thought it was hilarious. Without thinking, I recorded a quick video of him being clueless and sent it to our Snapchat group, The Core. I got home, opened the app again to see who watched it. Ty's name was on the list. I frowned. I texted him, "Yo, did you find your phone?" No response. The message didn't even say delivered. Something felt off. I messaged Marcus and asked if he'd talk to Ty. Marcus responded fast. "He's literally here at my place." No phone. Still lost. I stare at my screen. Then Marcus followed up, "We're checking SnapMap. You should come over." When I got there, Ty and Marcus were both huddled over his phone, staring at the SnapMap. Ty's Bitmoji was still active. And it wasn't at school. It was at an abandoned construction site across town. We debated whether it was worth checking out. But Gabe showed up minutes later, and once the four of us were together, we decided to go. It didn't feel real. We weren't scared yet. It felt more like a scavenger hunt, like we were solving a mystery. The site was cold and silent when we got there, wrapped in rusted fences and old signs that said "Do not enter," half ripped off the chain link. The kind of place people forgot existed. We hopped the fence easily enough. The sky was dimming fast, turning the empty frames of buildings into jagged black shapes. According to SnapMap, Ty's phone was in the largest structure, a 3-story shell of a building, windows broken, walls covered in faded graffiti. We found a hole in the side and stepped in. The inside felt wrong. Not just empty, abandoned, in the way things get when no human has touched them in a long, long time. Graffiti, broken pipes, a crushed soda can in a corner that echoed with every step we took. SnapMap said we were standing right on the phone, but there was nothing. We searched the first floor, nothing. We climbed the creaking metal stairs to the second floor. Still nothing. Then Marcus said something that made the air in my lungs freeze. All our Bitmojis are in the exact same place. That meant Ty's phone was right there, right with us, but we still couldn't find it. We stood in silence for a moment. Then, from the dark room just ahead of us, came the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter and a flash, a blinding, brilliant flash. We all froze. Then Gabe broke. He bolted, shouting at us to run. The rest of US didn't wait. We tore down the stairs, stumbling, one of us crashing into a loose pipe that clanged down the hallway like a gunshot. Out the hole, over the fence, back to the car. We slammed the doors shut and peeled out of the gravel lot, tires skidding. No one spoke. Back at Marcus's house, we all checked our phones. There was a new snap from Ty's account. It was a picture of us, the three of us, standing in that second floor room. The caption said, "Run." That was it. We never went back. The SnapMap location vanished the next day. Ty got a new phone a few days later, and the old one never came back online. We still talk about it sometimes. We wonder who took that picture, how long they had been watching us, if they were the one who took Ty's phone in the first place, or if it had been part of something bigger, something waiting. And every time I open Snapchat, I think about that flash, that cold silence, and I wonder, what if we hadn't run? I'd only been a police officer for 3 months when I saw something that still rattles in my bones every time I think about it. It was a Tuesday night, well, technically Wednesday morning. I was working one of those punishing overnight shifts that new recruits get dumped into. Midnight to noon. Long, brutal, and boring. Our small town, Briar Glen, has long stretches of forest broken up by the occasional gas station or diner. Most nights, my patrol route was a lonely blur of dark trees and empty roads. Around 2:45 a.m., I turned off Ridge Hollow Road and onto Warren Street, a long, straight run with actual streetlights. A few shuttered storefronts sat there, their windows dark. The only business on that street that still had some life during the day was a little coffee shop called the Hollow Bean. I went there enough that I knew the owner, Linda, by name. The shop always closed by 6 p.m. on weekdays. No exceptions, which is why I slammed the brakes when I saw the lights on inside. I reversed the cruiser and pulled up to the curb outside the shop. I rolled my window down and stared in, confused. The overhead lights were glowing inside. The coffee machines looked idle but ready. But there wasn't a soul in sight. That alone was weird enough. But when I got out and tried the door, it opened. The bell above it jingled faintly as I stepped in. "Linda," I called out. My voice echoed a little too loud in the empty cafe. There was something unnatural about how still the place felt, like it had been paused. I walked past the counter, scanning the back. Still nothing. That's when I heard it, a muffled thump from somewhere below. My heart sank. I didn't even know the shop had a basement. Behind the storage shelf near the bathroom, I found a plain wooden door, slightly ajar. A narrow staircase led into total darkness. There was no light switch in sight. I drew my flashlight, flicked it on, and took a deep breath. Then I stepped down into the dark. The concrete steps were slick with old dust. The smell was a thick blend of mold, stale coffee, and something else, something metallic. The light from my flashlight barely reached more than a few feet ahead. Shadows twitched as I moved. At the bottom, the air was freezing. I turned into a small basement room. Bare shelves, an ancient filing cabinet, and in the far corner, a heavy metal air vent. Then I heard it again. A noise low, distorted. Half mechanical, half not. It sounded like something caught between a dying engine and a gurgling voice. It came from the vent. I approached slowly. "Hello," I called out, forcing my voice to stay even. No answer. I crouched, aiming my flashlight into the vent, but the metal slats blocked most of the beam. I got closer, put my ear near the grill. That's when I heard it, breathing. Slow, shaky, just inches away. I froze. My blood turned cold. Then just for a split second, the light caught something inside. A glove. Leather, black, just barely visible behind the vent slats. It was pressed against the inside of the duct. No movement. Just there. I stumbled back and unholstered my gun. "Come out of there. Now." No response. I yanked at the vent cover, but it was screwed shut. Then I heard movement. Something, or someone, was crawling away inside the ducts. I could hear the scraping of limbs against metal, growing fainter until it was gone. Gone. I called for backup. When the others arrived, including Linda, we searched the entire building top to bottom. Every window was locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry. No vents removed. No tools. No footprints. Nothing. We unscrewed that vent cover, shone our strongest lights into the ductwork. Empty. Just dust and metal. The strange part? The layout didn't make sense. That vent had no clear exit. It didn't connect to any other external vent or heating unit. Just a sealed labyrinth that seemed to twist into nowhere. We never found out how anyone got in, or what had made that noise. Linda swore she hadn't been in the shop since closing. Security footage showed nothing after 6:10 p.m. The system didn't record the interior, only the door, and no one had come in since she left. That vent haunts me. It wasn't just the breathing. It was the feeling that whatever was down there had been waiting, watching, and it was inches from my face. In 2017, I worked at a 24-hour gas station along a rural stretch of highway in eastern Ohio. The kind of place that disappears into the fog at night, forgotten by the rest of the world. I worked the graveyard shift, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked the quiet. The first few hours were always busy with families on road trips or truckers stopping in. But by midnight, things went still. Between 1 o'clock and 4 a.m., you might see one car roll by every 10 minutes. I usually passed the time watching shows on my laptop or half-heartedly studying for the community college courses I was taking online. That night, the road outside was dead. No headlights for miles. I was leaning on the counter behind the register, lost in a sci-fi series, when a pair of lights suddenly flooded the windows. A car had pulled into the lot. It stopped at pump 3. The engine cut off. The lights went dark, but no one got out. I glanced up from my screen. The car was just sitting there, idling silently. Minutes passed. Still, no one exited. No footsteps. No sound. Just a silent vehicle in the stillness of the night. I told myself maybe the driver was counting cash, or texting, or sleeping. Then, finally, the driver's side door opened. A man stepped out. He was wearing a hoodie, the hood pulled low over his face. He stood next to his car for a moment, motionless. Then he turned to face the station. He was looking at me. Even with the glass, the distance, and the shadows, I could feel it. His posture wasn't passive. It was direct. I looked down, trying to act like I hadn't noticed. When I looked back up, he was gone. My heart jumped. A second later, the bell over the door jingled. He walked in without a word, past the counter without even glancing at me, and disappeared into the back aisle by the snacks. I strained to hear him. Nothing. No rustling. No footsteps. It was like he vanished. I called out, "You need any help, sir?" No answer. Just silence. Then, after what felt like 10 minutes, but was probably 2, he emerged again. No snacks. No drink. Just walked past the counter and out the door, never meeting my eyes. Back outside, he opened the passenger door and seemed to dig around inside. Then he closed it and just stood there, staring at me again. He raised one hand, gesturing, waving me over. I stayed behind the counter. His other hand slipped into his hoodie pocket. Something about his body language changed. Urgency, aggression. He began moving quickly toward the entrance, waving harder now, hands still in his pocket. That's when I saw it. The shape under the fabric. A handle. I sprinted around the counter, reached the door, and flipped the lock just as he grabbed the handle. We locked eyes for the first time. His face was gaunt, pale, eyes sunken, and in that moment, I was absolutely sure he was holding a knife. He yanked at the door, then stopped. I backed away and pulled the blinds shut. "We're closed," I shouted, voice cracking. He didn't leave. He knocked, soft at first, then harder. Again and again. Then it turned into banging. I screamed that I was calling the cops. He stopped. For a minute, I heard nothing, but I didn't check. I stayed crouched behind the counter, heart racing. I gave it 10 minutes before I dared peek out the window. His car was still there, but he was gone. Or hiding. I didn't know where he could be. Around the back, watching. Then, like a miracle, another car pulled into the lot. A guy in his 30s got out holding 2 20s. A customer. I quickly unlocked the door and let him in. Before he could speak, I said, "Be careful. There's a guy. He's still out there." Or he was. We talked for a while. I showed him the car. As we were speaking, the other car finally started up and rolled out of the lot, disappearing into the night. We both laughed nervously, but I wasn't okay. Not when the next shift worker arrived at 4 a.m. Not during my drive home, still checking my mirrors every block. And not when I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how close I came to never walking out of that store again. Nothing like that ever happened again during my time there. But every time I hear that doorbell jingle in my memory, I think about the knife and the man who came looking for something. Maybe not gas, maybe not money, but something. It was 2019. I was 19, working my second job ever, delivering for a corner Chinese food joint called Golden Lantern. The place wasn't much to look at, but the tips made it worth it. Weeknights were always hectic before closing, and Thursdays were no exception. That night, we had a late rush. It was 10:30, just 30 minutes before closing, when my boss, who was as friendly as a brick, shoved a small brown bag into my hands and barked, "One more. Be quick." The address was in a neighboring town about 5 miles out. One of those places where the streetlights were spaced too far apart, and every house looked like it had a secret. The order was nothing special, just a small soup and rice. Lightest bag I'd delivered all night. I pulled up to the house around 10:50. It sat alone at the end of a street of squat, tired houses. Most windows on the block were dark. The house itself was unlit except for a faint glow spilling out of the second-story window. That's when I saw it, half a face peeking out from behind the curtain. Not a child, not even a curious teen. A man, just the top of his face, his eyes, and the bridge of his nose, barely visible above the window sill. Watching. He didn't move. I stepped out of my car, chilled by the silent stare. The porch light was off, and the front of the house looked like it hadn't seen upkeep in years. Weeds growing through the cracks and steps. Paint peeling from the doorframe. I reached the door and found a note taped to it in blocky, uneven handwriting. Doorbell broken. Asleep. Door unlocked. Money on table. Please leave food inside. I stared at the note for a long time. It didn't sit right. Something about the wording was too specific, too cold. The kind of message someone writes not to welcome a visitor, but to lure them. I snapped a photo of the note just in case. Then I took a few steps back and looked up at the window again. Empty. The man was no longer watching. Every nerve in my body told me to walk away, but my brain fought back. Maybe they really are just socially awkward. Maybe it's nothing. Just drop the food and go. I turned the doorknob. It opened. The inside of the house was pitch black. Not dim, dark. I couldn't make out a single shape. The silence was suffocating. No TV, no footsteps, no coughs or shuffles or murmurs. Just the faint hum of a refrigerator somewhere to the left. I stood in the doorway, clutching the bag. My eyes strained to adjust. Nothing. Then, finally, I pulled out my phone and cranked the brightness all the way up. The beam cut through the dark and landed on a shape in the corner of the kitchen. A silhouette, not moving, not saying anything, just standing there. It was a man. I couldn't see his face, just the outline of his body. Stiff, upright, facing me. I didn't say a word. I didn't wait to find out what he wanted. I dropped the bag where I stood, turned around, and walked out. Calm on the outside, screaming on the inside. I got in my car, locked the doors, and didn't look back. The house didn't chase me, but it stayed with me. I told my boss, who didn't care. Next time, just leave the food. Don't make a scene. But I never delivered to that neighborhood again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I stepped further inside. If I had taken just a few more steps toward that table. And if the man in the shadows was waiting for that exact moment. Three months into my rookie year on the force, I learned something every cop eventually has to accept. Sometimes when you answer a call or walk into a scene, you leave with more questions than you came with. And some of those questions never let you go. It was a quiet Thursday night, well past 2 a.m., and I was on solo patrol through the southern half of our town, mostly forest roads and a stretch of strip malls that all shut down by sundown. I was circling back down a lit section of Northwood Avenue when something caught my eye. The coffee shop on the corner, Sable Grounds, was glowing. Not just a night light or a flickering neon sign. Every light inside was on, which didn't make sense. I knew for a fact they closed at 6 p.m. on weeknights. I went there almost every morning. Knew the owner, Carla. She was a stickler about hours. I pulled over and parked at the curb. The place looked pristine. No shattered glass. No signs of a break-in. But the lights? All blazing. I tried the door. It opened. That's when the unease really began. The overhead bell chimed like normal, but the silence that followed felt unnatural. My voice sounded too loud when I called out, "Carla? You here?" No answer, just the soft hum of the fridge and the buzz of the fluorescents. I took a few slow steps in. The smell of roasted coffee lingered, but underneath that there was something else. Something metallic. Cold. I called out again. Then I heard it. A muffled, mechanical sound, like static and wet gurgling mashed together. It drifted up from beneath the floorboards. I found a door near the back hallway I'd never noticed before. It led to a stairwell, steep and narrow. The light switch didn't work, so I drew my flashlight and started down. The basement smelled worse. Mildew and copper. The kind of scent that clings to the inside of your nostrils. My light barely cut the dark. At the bottom, I found myself in a concrete room lined with unused equipment, storage boxes, and dust-coated shelves. Then came the noise again, louder this time. A warped, almost garbled sound, like someone had recorded themselves screaming and played it through a broken speaker underwater. I followed it to a smaller back office, empty except for an old desk and a vent in the far corner of the floor. That's where it was coming from. I crouched down, shone my flashlight through the slats, but the grill distorted the beam, making it impossible to see more than a few inches inside. I leaned closer, and I heard it. Breathing. Not mechanical. Human. Ragged. Uneven. Close. I slowly pressed my ear closer to the grill. My hand instinctively went to my holster. Then the breathing stopped. I shifted my angle just slightly and caught a glint of something. The light refracted just enough to show. A gloved hand. It was pressed against the inside of the vent, 4 inches from my face. I shouted, pulled my weapon, and ordered them to come out. No response. Then I heard them moving, scraping their way backward into the ductwork. I tried to open the vent, but it was screwed down. By the time backup arrived, the noise was gone. We scoured the building from top to bottom. The owner arrived, sleepy and confused. She swore the place had been locked, and it was every window sealed, every door untouched. There were no signs of entry or exit. An event? It didn't connect to anything useful. The building schematic showed it was an abandoned ventilation path, sealed off years ago during renovations. According to the blueprints, it shouldn't have been accessible at all, but someone had been inside. Someone breathing. Someone waiting. I still hear that sound sometimes, the warbled screeching echoing up the stairs. I have no idea what they were doing in that vent, how they got in, or what they wanted, but I know this. They were close. Too close. When I was 9, my parents would sometimes drop me off for the weekend at my uncle's place in the countryside. He and my aunt own a modest farm in the rural outskirts of Ferndale, where my 2 cousins, Liam and Carter, were roughly the same age as me. It was our weekend wilderness, full of cornfields, creaky barns, and the kind of unsupervised freedom that lets a kid believe he's invincible. What made it even more exciting was the abandoned property, half a mile down the dirt road. Everyone called it the Blythe Farm, though no one could remember why. The place had been rotting away for decades. Collapsed sheds, a crumbling farmhouse, and a twisted old silo with its roof caved in like a crushed can. Naturally, we were obsessed with it. The place came with its own ghost story, too. Carter once whispered it to me one rainy night like a secret too dangerous to say out loud. The father went crazy, he'd said. Killed his whole family with a fire poker. Then hung himself in the barn. They say he still walks the halls at night, dragging something behind him, looking for new people to join him. Even back then, I didn't fully believe it, but I wanted to believe it. That's what made the thrill of sneaking over there even better. One afternoon, we decided to play hide and seek, me against the two of them. I took off running before they even finished counting and headed straight for the Blythe place. There was a 2-story barn at the far end of the property. Most of its roof had caved in, but a wooden stairwell still led up to a loft that had once served as a living space. I climbed up and started scouting for a hiding spot. It was a time capsule. There were broken chairs, moldy books, a cracked mirror with a lipstick message long faded to brown. I passed a torn photograph of a family, the father's face scratched out. I found a closet at the back of what might have once been a bedroom. There were still long black dresses swaying gently from the metal rod. It smelled like mothballs and something faintly sweet and rotten. Perfect. I crouched behind the hanging fabric and pulled the folding door shut, leaving only a sliver of light filtering through the crack. Knees pressed to my chest, I waited. Minutes passed, then more. The silence stretched. I started to wonder if they'd given up. Eventually, I must have nodded off. When I woke up, it was pitch dark. At first, I couldn't remember where I was. The air was cold. My legs were cramped. Then it hit me, I was still in the closet. And it was night. Panic settled in my stomach like wet cement. I rubbed my eyes, shifted my weight, and froze. A door had just slammed shut downstairs, followed by footsteps. Not quick or light. Heavy, deliberate, paired with a dragging sound. Step, thud, step, thud. Not my cousins. Not a child. Someone was in the house. I stopped breathing. The footsteps moved slowly through the lower rooms, boards creaking under the weight. Then they started up the stairs. My heart was hammering so hard I was afraid it would give me away. The dragging noise scraped across the floor like metal on stone. Closer, closer, now in the hallway. Then nothing. A silence so deep I thought my ears were broken, until the steps creaked into the bedroom and stopped right in front of the closet. My throat clenched. I couldn't move. Then another step, this time away. The sound of dragging followed as the steps faded down the hall. I don't know how long I waited after that. 5 minutes? 10? Maybe more. I finally worked up the nerve to open the closet door. And just as I did, 3 things happened at once. The air filled with a stench like raw meat left out in the sun. Fresh roadkill. I heard ragged, rasping breathing behind me. Something exhaled hot breath onto the back of my neck. I screamed and hurled myself out of the closet, tripping over debris, slamming my knees on broken floorboards, blindly navigating the maze of decay. Behind me, I heard footsteps again, this time faster, chasing me, gaining. I never looked back. I didn't stop until I burst into the field outside, gasping for air. Only when I reached the dirt road did I dare turn around. Nothing. No footsteps. No one behind me. But I didn't stop running until I reached my uncle's porch. where a police cruiser sat in the driveway. My parents were there too. Everyone looked panicked. Turns out, my cousins had come home hours earlier when they couldn't find me. A search party was formed. The cops claimed they had already checked every building on the abandoned farm, including the barn. They hadn't found me, or anyone else. I told them what happened. The closet, the footsteps, the breath on my neck. They looked at me like I'd dreamed it all. Years later, when I was 16, Carter told me the part they hadn't shared. They had seen someone in the window of the barn's upper room. A boy, smiling, waving for them to come up. But it wasn't me. That was the moment they ran home, while I was still asleep in the closet. A few months ago, a group of us teens from the neighborhood had gathered, as we usually did on Friday nights, to play manhunt. It was our tradition. We didn't live in a typical suburb. Our street was more spaced out, lots of trees, houses with big yards, and barely any traffic. That quiet emptiness made it the perfect playground after dark. I'm 16, one of the older kids. My best friend, Leo, was with me, along with the rest of the gang. Rachel, Marcus, Jaden, and Zach, all younger by a year or two. We usually played near Rachel's house, since the area had just enough cover and abandoned sheds to make it thrilling. That night, Leo and I were on the hiding team. We decided to get creative. "Let's hit the old Hargrave house," Leo said, grinning. It was a bold move. Everyone knew the place had been empty since old Mr. Hargrave passed away a few years back. The property was a bit run down, paint peeling, grass uncut, blinds drawn on every window. But it wasn't locked up, and we'd snuck in once or twice before. We made our way behind the house, near the edge of a man-made lake that mirrored the full moon in its still waters. Leo suddenly got the idea to crawl through a sliding window on the side of the house. I told him I'd stay outside, hidden in the bushes nearby, and keep watch. I crouched low, trying to stay still and quiet. From time to time, I peeked toward the yard, watching for the seekers. A few minutes later, I saw Jaden and Zach making their way through the grass, calling out to each other. They were being loud, too loud. They didn't suspect we were hiding so close. Eventually, they moved on deeper down the street. I figured it was time to move. I looked up at the house again, searching the windows. That's when I saw him. Leo, his face in one of the upstairs windows, staring down at me. Relieved, I waved, signaling that we should go. The coast was clear, but he didn't respond. He just stood there, his expression hard to read. Maybe he didn't see me. Maybe the glass was too reflective from his side. I decided to go in and get him. I slid open the same window Leo had entered through and stepped inside. The house was cold, still, and dark. My footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. I called out softly, "Leo." That's when I heard his voice. "Dude, SHHH." It came from just a few feet away. I spun around, and there he was crouched behind a table in the living room. "What the hell?" I whispered. "How did you get downstairs so fast?" He looked at me, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I've been here the whole time." The air in the room seemed to shrink. We both turned our heads upward at the same time, toward the ceiling. A single, slow creak sounded from above. Something or someone was walking upstairs. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. We bolted, back out the window, into the yard, through the trees, and all the way back to Rachel's place without stopping. Breathless and pale, we called off the game. Later that night, we told Leo's dad what happened. He had been close friends with Mr. Hargrave back in the day and knew the house well. We asked if anyone had moved in recently. "No," he said firmly. "That house has been empty since the old man died. Nobody's bought it." He offered to go back with us and take a look. Maybe He said it was just squatters. Maybe. We returned to the Hargrave house together and re-entered the same way. Leo's dad led us upstairs to the room where I had seen the face in the window. The room was empty. The floor was dusty, except for one thing. In the center of the room lay a crumpled, reddish-brown blanket. No furniture, no signs of anyone living there. Just that blanket. We searched the rest of the house. Nothing. Leo's dad stood silently in the doorway for a long time before saying, "If any of you ever see someone here again, we go to the police. No waiting. No games." It's been months since that night. We kept our distance. But I know what I saw in that window wasn't Leo. It was something pretending to be him. Something that wanted me to come inside. Years ago, when I was living alone in a small house just outside a sleepy Appalachian town, I used to fish at a place locals called Ash Hollow Pond. It wasn't marked on any map. There was no trailhead, no signs, just a foot-worn path off a service road that dipped into the trees and led to a still, glassy body of water tucked deep into the woods. I never knew who Ash was, and I never saw anyone else out there. The pond didn't seem to belong to anyone, and that suited me just fine. It became my secret sanctuary. I tied a nylon cord between a thick birch tree and a rusted metal stake I'd hammered into the shoreline. That was where I'd dock my kayak after casting lines all afternoon. That afternoon started like any other. Clear skies, soft wind, and silence thick enough to soothe even the deepest anxieties. I paddled out to the center of the pond, the sweet spot, where the water was deepest and the fish seemed to gather like ghosts. I cast my line, let it settle, and leaned back with my hat over my eyes. Then I heard a voice. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Startled, I lifted my head. A man had emerged from the trees on the far side of the pond, maybe 40 yards away. I hadn't heard a single footstep. He stepped into an old aluminum rowboat, one I'd never seen there before, and started paddling toward me. I waved, trying to play it cool. "Sure is." He didn't smile, just kept rowing. As he got closer, I could see him more clearly. Older than me, maybe in his late 50s, weathered skin, wild gray stubble on his cheeks, and eyes that didn't blink often enough. Something about him put me on edge immediately. When his boat thudded softly into mine, I flinched. He said nothing. I laughed nervously. "You, come out here often?" He shook his head slowly. "Don't fish." My mouth went dry. "Oh, just relaxing then. Just watching." That sentence sent a cold trickle down my spine. He was too close. His boat had drifted against mine and stayed there like he'd planned it. I tried turning slightly, pretending to fiddle with my tackle box, but I could feel his gaze boring into my side. I glanced over. He was still staring. I forced eye contact, trying to read him. After 4 seconds, he looked away, expression unchanged. "Where are you from?" I asked. He gestured vaguely over his shoulder. "Out that way." "You live in Greystone?" "No." A long pause. "What brings you out here?" "Why not?" Every word from him was clipped, emotionless. He didn't ask me anything. He just watched. I could see his hands resting on his thighs, one twitching slightly. I decided I'd had enough. I started rowing gently toward the shore, hoping it would look casual, like I was just repositioning. He followed, paddle for paddle, shadowing me. My throat tightened. I felt the pond suddenly shrink around me. Dense woods on all sides, no trail cameras, no cell service, no way to call for help. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Think I'm going to call it a day." He didn't respond. I glanced back. His face had changed. Gone was the passive half-smile. "I can't let you leave," he said. He lifted the edge of his flannel shirt. revealing the handle of a pistol tucked into the waistband of his jeans. My instincts took over. I plunged into the water, arms and legs thrashing as I swam the last 30 yards to the shore. I didn't look back, didn't stop. I crashed through the woods, branches slicing my arms, and didn't stop running until my house appeared through the trees. I slammed the door, locked every bolt, pulled down every blind. But I kept one sliver open, just enough to watch. Evening came, darkness followed, and then I heard it. Leaves crunching outside, not random wildlife. Footsteps, then a voice. "Hey buddy, you up there? Didn't mean to wake you." It was him, right below my second-story bedroom window. I froze. No lights on, no sound. I crawled from my room, phone clutched in my hand, heart battering my ribs. I slid into the kitchen, dialed 911, and whispered my location into the receiver. I waited in the dark, listening. Every second stretched like a lifetime. I kept expecting to hear the back door creak open, a window shatter, but none of that happened. The police arrived 20 minutes later and scoured the area. No sign of him, no footprints, no boat. They suggested I stay with someone. I packed a bag and left that night. I moved a month later. I haven't seen him since. But sometimes when I fish by the coast now, surrounded by people and open sky, I still find myself glancing over my shoulder. And I wonder how long he had been watching me before he let himself be seen.